You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Unless, of course, your name is Sebastian Vettel, in which case you do pretty much the complete opposite of that. That's right, today I want to talk about Sebastian Vettel, the man on the grid at this moment in time who seemingly can do no wrong. But we need to remember there was a time where Sebastian Vettel was, I'm going to say hated, but that's quite a strong word. But I think it's fairly safe to say he was hated by a lot of the Formula One fans, a lot of the other drivers on the grid. But how has he gone through this arc where he was, an up-and-coming youngster to one of the most hated drivers on the grid to now this Sebastian Vettel, which, as I said, can do no wrong at this point in time, seems like the perfect ambassador for Formula One in every single way. I want to delve into the history of Sebastian Vettel, his fall and eventual rise with the fans of Formula One. So if you're new, hit like, hit subscribe, and let's delve into Sebastian Vettel. We're going to start off with the early years. He was at BMW Sauber 2006, 2007, and after actually Kubica had his crash, he got his first drive in Formula One. He didn't do too much at BMW Sauber. Many people don't remember that he was there at all, to be honest with you. I think mainly people remember his Toro Rosso days. And now Sebastian Vettel came into Formula One with a lot of potential. He was seen as one of the drivers that was going to take that step forward, but he didn't start very well. In fact, he came under quite a lot of criticism. This is one quote from his eventual teammate, Mark Webber, saying just how he didn't really like how Sebastian Vettel was driving that day, in a lot more words than Mark Webber managed to put it. But, he was starting to gain that experience at Toro Rosso. He was getting into the car, but realistically, if you go back and watch some of those first races, he really didn't show the talent of what would eventually be a four-time world champion. In fact, in 2009, he started so awfully that he was sort of nearly, I think, personally, going to get replaced by the Toro Rosso team at the end of the season. He started absolutely atrociously, and it was around about the European Grand Prix in Valencia where he just suddenly turned it around. I've got a quote here. Suddenly Vettel understood something about how to drive a Formula One car quickly. It made a huge difference in not only his speed, but he could unlock, but he also had that ability to do so consistently. And that was the sort of turning point for Sebastian Vettel. He then went on to go and be the youngest Grand Prix winner, the youngest pole sitter, an incredible force at that Toro Rosso team. And once he had unlocked that ability to drive in that Toro Rosso, there was no turning back for him. He then made that move up to Red Bull. In 2009, he was a runner-up to Jenson Button by just 11 points, which is insane considering how well that Brawn car started the season. Jenson Button won every race in the first half of the season, pretty much, and slowly Sebastian Vettel started to claw that back. And by the end of the season, that 2009 season in the Red Bull, we started to see the inkling, started to see that domination that was going to come in. I think people underestimate this domination because in 2010, it was actually very, very close indeed. In 2010, he wasn't actually leading the championship until after the final race. His first world championship win, and he wasn't leading the championship at any point that season. But this is where the hatred of him starts to come in from the media, from the other drivers. He then goes on to dominate for 3 years. From 2010 to 2013, he won all 4 world championships in a row in that Red Bull car. Absolutely dominated. He trounced pretty much everybody else on the grid. Nobody really put up any sort of fight. The real problem, though, and the reason that I think the press and fans started to jump on his back a little bit was it was incredibly boring to watch. He was so incredibly quick compared to everybody else. On a Saturday, mainly, he would just win the races in qualifying. He was at home in that Red Bull car. And people don't like to see, first of all, the same driver winning every single race, let alone winning it comfortably. What he would do is on Saturday, he'd qualify tenths above everybody else, easily get a pole position. He'd absolutely fly around for the first 5 or 6 laps, get out of DRS range of whoever was in second, and then effectively drive on his own for 90 minutes. it wasn't very exciting to see as a race fan. We were hoping that there'd be a bit more battle at the front rather than in the midfield to watch along with, but he just absolutely destroyed the rest of the field. There was nothing that they could do, and he started to win upon win upon win. And it's that winning streak that then came with confidence, but also arrogance at the same time. It rubbed the fans up the wrong way. It rubbed the media the wrong way. And he was continually booed, to be honest. He was booed on track, on the podiums, in the track displays. He was booed absolutely everywhere, many times at many different races, to the point where lots of people tried to sort of get behind Vettel a little bit and try and stop the fans from booing him, but it just wasn't happening. And I think it was mainly because of this arrogance, this confidence that he had. He knew he was number one, and that infamous finger celebration. That celebration that drove fans and drivers alike absolutely crazy because they couldn't get anywhere near him, and he knew that, and he was showing that every single time he got a pole position, every single time he got a win. We would just see that finger. When it came to drivers as well, it was clear that he was the main man in Red Bull. I mean, starting from Mark Webber absolutely hated Sebastian Vettel because Mark Webber was clearly the number 2 driver in the team. Every single upgrade that went to Sebastian Vettel first, every single thing that Red Bull could do to make that car quicker went to Sebastian Vettel first. Every single time there was team radio, it was always Mark Webber on the losing end of it. And, those quotes from a few years ago suddenly came back to bite Mark Webber quite heavily as Sebastian Vettel dominated that Red Bull team and became the driver that then sort of ushered Webber out of Formula One entirely, to be honest with you. But it wasn't just his teammate that wasn't a fan of Sebastian Vettel. We had the likes of Alonso, Hamilton, Button. They never said anything directly that was, demeaning or demoralizing about Vettel, but they certainly didn't like him. He was definitely, at this point in his career, one of the most hated drivers we've seen in a very long time in Formula One. And it was the continual dominance, the arrogance that he showed, and also the fact that he just knew he was the best. 2014 is where we start to have a flip. How did we take this journey from Sebastian Vettel, this winner, this hatred for him, to the beloved spokesperson we have today? Well, 2014 was the sort of start of the crumbling castle of Red Bull. We had Mark Webber leave the sport. We had Daniel Ricciardo step up into the Red Bull seat. And Sebastian Vettel suddenly was struggling massively. He couldn't get to grips with the new car. He ended up actually coming behind Daniel Ricciardo in the Drivers' Championship. Ricciardo came third with 238 points. Vettel came fifth with 167. Not only did he start to lose out to his teammate, though, the Mercedes team entered the game. That Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry was at its forefront, at its beginnings, and everyone in the constructors started to catch up to Red Bull, and Mercedes just absolutely trounced them. So it was a humbling season. He was humbled by his teammate, and suddenly he wasn't the fastest driver on the grid anymore. He couldn't just out-qualify the Mercedes and drive away into the distance. So at the end of that season, he then decides that it's time to make a move. It's time to step into a Ferrari car. Everyone is a Ferrari fan. I think this was a good move for Sebastian Vettel in terms of trying to grab some acclaim back from the fans, because everybody loves Ferrari. It's one of those old school teams. And not only was he going into a Ferrari that was nowhere near the Mercedes, he was going into a Ferrari where he was now the underdog. Kimi Räikkönen had been there a little while. Kimi Räikkönen had a good grip on the car. Could he, overtake Räikkönen and then also start to look towards those Mercedes in front of him as well? And it was at Ferrari where transforming from a villain into an idol started to happen. Those first few years, he fell from winning over and over and over again to being third or fourth best, and honestly, comfortably third or fourth best behind the Mercedes, to be honest with you. The Mercedes were absolutely dominant at this time. And I think it helped that suddenly Sebastian Vettel wasn't this driver that was dominating the sport, and the arrogance that he had around him, that shell of confidence, started to dwindle just a little bit, and we could see, his joking side of his personality a little bit more, to the point where even in the 2017-2018 seasons, fans were a little bit gutted that he wasn't able to beat Hamilton and Mercedes to a title. He'd started to get Ferrari, started to rise the phoenix from the ashes of Ferrari. And could he be that guy to finally turn Ferrari around, win a Drivers' Championship in a Ferrari? It didn't quite happen for him. And he also seemed a little bit more comfortable in the Ferrari team as a whole. He sort of fit in there quite nicely. He was coming across as less arrogant, and also he was coming across as an underdog in an old school team. We could see that he had that real passion for F1. It wasn't just arrogance and confidence. It was a true belief that he had passion for F1 and passion for his ability. The final piece of the puzzle for me, though, is the Sebastian Vettel we know and love today is sort of framed around the fact that he was so comfortable in that Ferrari. I think he loved that Ferrari team. Obviously, he was sort of sitting in the seat of his idol, Michael Schumacher, in Ferrari. And then suddenly, he's no longer the prodigal son at Ferrari. Charles Leclerc comes in, and Sebastian Vettel is given a bit of a see into by Ferrari. They suddenly just drop him. It looks like he's going to be out of Formula One for the foreseeable future. He hasn't got a seat anywhere else at this point. Nobody saw it really coming, and I actually quite liked that final season that Sebastian Vettel had with Ferrari because he just did not care at all whatsoever. You can see it in press conferences. He just didn't care. He was more than happy to see that, if I'm leaving Ferrari at the end of the year, I don't need to do what I'm told. I don't need to be the man that they want us to be. Drive to Survive showed this perfectly. And we saw a real character change for Sebastian Vettel. He was suddenly, this fan favourite. He'd gone from this hated driver, but now we could see his real personality. We could see this spark in him. He really wanted to stay in Formula One. And for me, I'm just so glad that he was able to get that Aston Martin seat. And as you can see, we've gone from this dominant driver, winning every single race, arrogant in press conferences, to this man that we have now that has gone through those trials and tribulations, has had the heartbreak at Red Bull, being outdone by his teammate, has had the heartbreak of missing out on world championships in a Ferrari that he would have absolutely loved to win a world championship in, and also then, being kicked out of Ferrari when he would have wanted to stay there, I think, for the foreseeable future. Now we see him at Aston Martin, and personally, I think Sebastian Vettel at this point is the perfect ambassador for Formula One. He shows what he believes in. He talks his mind. He stands up for everything that counts. He's wearing the pride colours. He's checking in on Lando. He's being a mentor to Mick. He's saving the bees. He just does everything that you would want from somebody who can be an ambassador for Formula One. And personally, I really hope that even when he does come to the end of his Formula One career, he stays around in the paddock, whether that's as the FIA or more as like a Niki Lauda-esque personality on the grid. We need to keep hold of him. He has gone through the trials and tribulations of Formula One, and he is a wonderful asset to now have. I wouldn't have probably said that 10 years ago, but now he is by far and away one of the most beloved drivers and one of my favourite drivers on the grid as well. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Why would Hamilton and Alonso and Button have hated Sebastian Vettel back in those days? And why now is Sebastian Vettel one of the most loved? What's your favourite Sebastian Vettel moment over his illustrious career in Formula One? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe as always, and I will see you next time.